I want to talk about board remuneration trends that we're seeing, and I think we're going to have a very interesting year ahead in 2025 with regards to board remuneration. Across the board, I think there's a recognition that this work is challenging, it's requiring professional development, it is a real separation happening between the amateurs and the professionals in the market, and as a result, the remuneration has to reflect the seriousness of the work and the responsibilities that the directors are taking on. Across the board, we have had a small cohort of ASX listed organisations who have quite frankly tried it on and have been really remunerating board directors incorrectly at a very, very low rate. And we had a couple of clients in the years past who really were trying to sort of get away with paying, in the 20,000 range for a board appointment, which really involved multiple board appointment meetings, up to 20 plus meetings a year, taking into account committee work. And at that level of remuneration, you're going to find that people are going to start to bug out. They're going to start to say, well, look, it's just not worth the risks, especially when you're in a public environment and you have a high load of work in regards to regulatory issues and responsibilities. So the baseline that we really are starting to see now throughout the ASX is certainly 50 at the very low end of the spectrum, up to sort of 80 to 100 for a mid-size listed organisation. And of course, you can automatically double those figures if there's chair appointment or if there's multiple committee roles also being added into the mix. Even for a straightforward committee role in the ASX, those roles are being remunerated somewhere around the sort of 30 to 50 range if it's on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of number of meetings and expectations around time commitment. In the private sector, I think the private sector, quite frankly, is leading the way with remuneration. There is a big game on and a recognition that if you want to get the very best talent around your table, you're going to have to remunerate them well. And there's not a lot of demarcation between non-exec and advisory board roles. Starting sort of rates tend to be calculated based on the number of meetings. So let's say, for example, there's 8 to 10 formal board meetings a year. You're going to see that remuneration sort of starting around the sort of 50, 60K mark, but very quickly you can see those numbers double, especially even in quite modest sized organisations. So that sweet spot in the market is kind of the 10 to 50 million turnover range. This is where companies are very aspirational. They're trying to grow. They're trying to navigate challenges in business. And so hence they're very willing to, pay the right fees to bring the right people to the table. We did quite a few roles in the family office environment, and that is extremely lucrative. We find that those environments do tend to pay quite well, and it's not uncommon to see a board director being paid 120,000 plus per annum for a modest number of board meetings. Now, one of the big challenges in the market across the board is the not-for-profit sector, and of course what has happened in that space is traditionally it's been unpaid or maybe expenses for a very, very long period of time, and it's really had an impact, I think, on not-for-profit boards because they've really struggled to bring the very, very best talent to the table. And increasingly now I'm getting a very large number of clients saying they're not willing to do unpaid board work. And, I think, again, this comes back to risks and liabilities, but time commitment predominantly. And even if you, as a volunteer board director, don't have, incredible legal risks, you might still have reputational risks. And so a lot of people are walking away from this unpaid work. I think the quality not-for-profits are starting to think very creatively about how they're going to attract the right talent. So even if they can't afford a lot in terms of board fees, even the smallest amount of remuneration will help to attract the right people. and some sort of commitment towards professional development fees or professional memberships, such as the Australian Institute of Company Directors, can be quite helpful to attract people to these organisations. So I think not-for-profits going forward, if they're going to have good succession plans, good quality people around the table, are going to have to think about some form of remuneration. And maybe you might calibrate around a smaller board but a higher calibre board of directors. And I certainly think we'll see that transition over the next few years. Across the board, though, remuneration is extremely positive. We've been tracking a number of reports, tracking what board directors are earning. I know in my own practice, which is quite substantial, and I'm coming into contact with literally thousands of board members, and we benchmark the salaries. We're seeing an uplift. We're seeing the rates go up. We're seeing the number of board meetings also go up as well, the complexity around business, the number of committee meetings. So, these are not lightweight commitments, so hence the remuneration has to reflect that. But certainly we have a number of clients who would be earning very close to $500,000 in board fees if they're running a full board portfolio. And then we have another part of our cohort who are earning over the $1 million mark. These are executives who are typically working in the ASX, and or they're working with a number of family offices at the very high end of the private sector community and working across quite large private enterprises. So it is possible to generate quite nice income. That said, when I'm asking people what are their motivations for working in this space, certainly a lot of people are motivated by income. And I do try and counsel you that in the early days of a board career, it does take time to build up to substantial levels of income. And it's not uncommon to have at least 2, maybe even 3 initial board roles that are extremely light on remuneration, and maybe they're just expenses only. It does take time to build up. And the other comment I should make about the startup community is you'll often find that you might be paid in shares, in equity, but I do counsel a lot of my clients to make sure that there is a cash component as well to offset the risks that that equity might be underwater for a very long time. So I think it's a very exciting time to be a board director, certainly for executives who are in the C-suite who want to transition to a board director career. You certainly can replicate your C-suite salaries. You can increase the level of flexibility you're going to have later in life, but it might take a little bit of time to build up to those levels. And so people who are prepared to pay the long game will typically do quite well financially. And the people who override income with a really core set of values and clarity around the right board roles for them tend to do well over the long term. So always keep the fundamentals in mind when you're looking at board seats.